I'm from Sogeti in the UK, and with me is Marco Venzler, with a very traditional English name, as you can tell from that. Now, Marco is going to be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly, and there'll be bonus points for anyone who can whistle the theme tune at him at the end, because it gets stuck into his head and it sticks there for days and it annoys him. Now, Mark and I have actually worked together for a very long time, and one of the things that he's always been very focused in on is automation, going back over 20 years now, isn't it, mate?
Yeah. So been doing automation in and out of automation of the last 20, 25 years now. So yeah.
Mm. Yeah, and I won't ask the obvious question is why I haven't got it right yet, because I think that's a bit unfair in something like this, because you want to share some of your experiences about really what works and
Absolutely.
what doesn't.
Absolutely. That's all about today. It's all about that.
Yeah.
So
Do you want to give a little bit of a bio about yourself to anyone who
yeah,
doesn't know you first?
that's fine. So yes, I am Dutch. Indeed, the name is a slight giveaway on that one. But working with Sogeti UK for the last 6 years, but I think in total we managed to get to 10 years almost, so that's good. But been doing automation and performance for the last 25 years in various different consultancies and pretty much any industry you can imagine, worked through that. And that's what's about today. It's kind of sharing experiences, but also giving you guys a chance to kind of share some of your experiences with the Menti questions also, to kind of seeing yeah, the wild west of test automation. It still is sometimes. So
So I think for anyone who may have any visual difficulties in viewing, the main slide is the title characters from the spaghetti western, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Lee Van Cleef, Clint Eastwood, and the other one who no one can ever remember what his name was.
okay.
So what brought you to thinking about this as the Wild West and the good, the bad, and the ugly, Marco?
Um, well, I think it is sometimes the Wild West when we get to clients and see the various, especially if we go into new clients and we find these situations where automation is brought in or already started, or and we can find them in such a different variety. And I think it's kind of important to understand also where these kind of ugly or bad situations come from. Those are as important as the good ones, of course, because it helps us avoid those areas, and how we can work for going forward, kind of improve how we all work together and everything else, especially around tooling.
Because one of the things I've always noticed over the last 20 odd years is that testing has matured. It's been a lot more discipline, and yet automation feels like it's still not quite there with the rest of it. Is that fair?
I think there's definitely some really bad examples in there, but I mean, at the same time, there's some real good automation going on. Um, I mean, the tools have matured tremendously over the 25 years, and they are in a very good state now. Automation is almost known across the industry, at least kind of what is this automation, but how it's applied and what benefit it brings. I think it's still not fully known, and that will come up also in today's call.
Because I think one of
So
the things we talked about was trying to get people's opinion at the start of this, and then
indeed.
seeing if there's any changes in opinion towards the end.
Absolutely. So one of the things we'll start off with in a second is indeed kind of what is your idea of good and the bad, of what automation is like now. But we also look at kind of your views on um, what is bad and what is good, because after all, that's kind of different opinions in these things. So,
Mm.
so it will be interesting to see kind of what people's experiences are in these things. But on that note, I think we should start our first Menti question, because I think it's a good starting point of saying kind of in your experiences of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Um, what is your experience with automation?
So can you jump back a slide, please, Ishmael, so we can get people the right code up on the screen. So,
It's on. It was on top. It was on top. Yeah, that's fine.
okay, so Menti is a tool that allows us to pull you questions interactively in this. So if you go to www.menti.com and then you enter the code 44327729, you get to answer the first of the questions that we're going to ask you today. And we'll talk about the answers as well.
Absolutely.
And what you actually put into all of this will affect how the conversation goes.
Oh, how can ugly be green? I mean, honestly.
I'm going to make sure I sort of stick my sort of thoughts into this as well.
Oh,
So
that's
what
interesting.
happens
Oh,
after you voted, and you can leave the screen after you voted and come back to the presentation one, is that it will refresh when we move on to the next questions.
absolutely.
Well, I wasn't
We got
expecting
one
some.
bad. We got one
Yeah.
bad in there, so that's good. And of course, I guess it could be also in your current project, or it could be in just in over in general. So, but we'll come through that.
Actually, that's more positive than I was expecting it to be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're all practitioners in automation, hopefully. So, or most of us, and so we probably all say kind of bias that automation is good, but
Well, as somebody who's involved in that area, my normal bias as a tester is bad or ugly.
yeah, unfortunately, it's that a lot of times ugly appears. Unfortunately, but generally that's where we start off with, and then hopefully, in given time and resources, you can turn it around. These things. So, and
I
that's
suppose
that,
sorry, go on.
and that's a couple of times being involved in those kind of projects, and that's
Mm,
important. Kind of to understand that those projects also just that you come in, pick up an ugly solution, and steer that into a good implementation. So
yeah. I suppose also if you're called in to look at something, it's not normally because everything's wonderful. So
no,
maybe there's a bit of a bias in certainly in my way of thinking. I don't go to see where the automation's good. I only go to see where there's a problem.
exactly,
Cool. Well, I thought that was quite useful actually, and it did surprise me.
absolutely.
So let's go back to the rest of the presentation, perhaps.
Okay.
We used to have super whizzy software that would work and do all of these things for us. Now we have Ishmet who has to press lots and lots of buttons by herself to make all of this
Exactly.
work, and we do appreciate your efforts.
Right. So so we saw that it's kind of the good stood out there, but I'm glad to say that we had some bad and ugly experiences. So if we kind of look at the aspects of bad, do it in reverse order. So from the bad, but bad and ugly are quite similar. So it will be interesting to see what's in your experiences. So we quickly another Menti question of what is actually bad automation when you come across it. When do you see automation, and what comes to mind when you come and see bad automation? I think we are talking about 3 words to come up with, and it could be anything. There's it's a large list that we can come across, and we'll certainly go through those. There we go. Unstructured, yes, as always, indeed. like the lazy one. That is an interesting one. Lazy automation. Porridge. Oh, I'll have to. I think that person will have to email me, kind of think, explain porridge on that one.
You mean it's a nice, tasty breakfast made of good, healthy oats, water, or milk, or it's
Yeah,
an unstructured lump of grey goo?
exactly. Oh, that's some really good ones in there.
Mm,
Some familiar ones. That certainly will come up in the call. Oh,
yeah,
I see we also got some tooling in there. Is very good.
I think Oh, there's an interesting one there. Deceitful.
Now that's one I didn't have on my list yet.
No. We've done some dry runs on this where we tried to guess what people would actually sort of come out with. And I think porridge and deceitful are two that we didn't have in any of the
No,
options so far.
no, not in the slightest of thoughts there, that one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really, really good from everybody there.
Yeah, we've got some really interesting ones on
Yeah,
here because I think in this we've got so many of the things that we've talked about, not just in preparation for today, but over the years about the challenges that we get. You know, the lack of
absolutely.
strategy, maintenance, you know, seems to be a really popular one. And I've just had conversations in recent weeks with well, you've written the test. Why on earth do you need to update it? Well, you've just ripped out your front end architecture and replaced every single element with new
Yeah,
elements.
exactly.
Mm. So
Right.
let's sort of drill down into your view on all of this,
Yes.
please.
So let's. I mean, it's kind of disputable about kind of how we. Oh, let me move you out of the way. How we what is bad and what's ugly.
Mhm.
The two come kind of hand in hand. But if we start looking at ugly, in my sorry, bad, and in my view, kind of assumed an understanding of test automation, and that's probably needs a bit of extra words on that because it's often the that's and it could be sales, it could be tool vendors that will go in and preach about test automation and it's wonderful and everything else, and um, and assume that the clients all know what test automation stands for and what's involved with it. And I think that is always a danger. I mean, assume is we should never, as testers, assume anyway. But it's that understanding of our stakeholders. Being a project manager, being a test manager, it doesn't matter. We should explain this to all, so that we're all on the same page. We saw it in the word clouds, tools, poorly chosen tools, or just arbitrary, saying, well, I like that, or well, somebody sold it to me as cheap, or another one I come up with, a contractor or freelancer came in, took a tool with him because he knew what he was doing, and now we're stuck with it. So it's kind of what was the reason for it, and there's some extra things on there we can think about later on also. Now, Andrew and I had a bit of discussion around this one, if
Yeah.
this belongs here or not. This is not so much say that automation is always a solution to be used. Absolutely not. But we should be considering it. And if you're in Agile, there should be one heck of a reason if you not want to use it. So I think it's needs to be in that list. Finally, kind of what I think is kind of bad is your shelfware. I've seen it a couple of times where you come in and saying, kind of called in and say, well, look, we bought the tool, we started it off as a proof of concept, but it's just sitting there. We can't do anything with it, and that is a shame for the investment and for the benefits you could potentially get out of it. So that's kind of a bad approach on these things.
I mean, there's really a common thread, I think, that sort of links all of these together, and that's not stopping to think about it before you start.
Absolutely.
Lack of planning, lack of strategy, lack of trying to work out what you hope to achieve, perhaps.
Yep, and that's indeed what we in the work I also say indeed if you don't have a strategy. And that actually brings us nicely into the kind of the ugly implementation side of things. And that is actually not having an automation strategy or a tooling strategy for that matter. And again, some people say, oh, well, it's yet another document. In true agile style, a page is enough as long as you're clear about what you're doing, what the reasons are, then you know the direction. It's not just about you, the people that implement it. It's also about stakeholders knowing what to expect from things. So I think that is something that that is definitely on the ugly side of things. Another one that I came up the unstructured side of things, it's kind of unstructured automation is just ugly because it has an impact on maintenance that I also saw popping up in the work cloud, and that's right. It works towards duplication of code, and it almost feels like just the need to automate and not actually. It's kind of think about the actual testing. You are still testing. It's not just automation. It's just still testing. So, not to be forgotten. I'm not sure that popped in the. I think it's Dead Sea popping up in the cloud also. Standards. That ranges from the simple thing of where commenting and all the kind of stuff. How do you write your code? How do you structure your code? But also kind of make sure that you code with a purpose. Don't just do ad hoc kind of, I can build something fun, fancy around this screen, or it's you need to be working on kind of a standard that drives everybody in the same direction, especially if you're going to hand it over to somebody else. One that's it's maybe kind of slightly unbelievable, but I have seen automation code where there were no validations taking place, no assertions, because well, the reasoning behind it was, well, if my test runs fine all the way to the end, therefore it is a pass. Yeah, not have to tell you guys, not have to tell you that that's definitely classified as an ugly solution.
I have to admit, I've done that one once, but it was on the start of a 4-day weekend. We needed just something to get as far as it could do, and if it broke, it broke. We didn't care because it would tell us where we needed to look at when we came back on the Tuesday. But all of these really sort of go back to as a so that type sort of statements, or given then when, given that I want to use automation, what do I need to do? How do I do it?
Smooth to put that in there, given when then. But that's really good because is the framework, the given when then, the Cucumber framework. If you don't use a framework, and again, it doesn't have to be rocket science. It doesn't have to be something developed for 12 months and everything else. It's not using a framework is you need to be structured in your automation. So a framework comes very closely to it, and there should be no excuse anymore nowadays because there are plenty around, and we'll come to in a minute about what actually good looks like.
Well, one of the things that bugs me about frameworks, while we're still sort of on that one, is that a lot of the time when I talk to people, I've written a new framework, right? We spent 6 months on the automation, and you've written a framework, and now we can actually start doing some scripting. And you've recreated about 10% of an existing framework.
Exactly.
I would much rather cut down on the complexity, and it's a great tool of learning, though. I can see why people do it. I've done it myself. But a lot of the time, it's just walking away from it and picking the right one.
And it's sometimes as a coder, as an automator, it's a great achievement that you build a framework. Eventually, I think sometimes we should not always use a client's time for that one. We should have these in our bag.
Well, I remember you building a framework probably about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And you had to, because none of the elements were there, you had to do the reporting part. And that was a big step forward for us, being able to actually get a graph out that was telling us our progress.
Yeah, and that's absolutely, and that again, it's managing your test automation, and we'll come to a minute what that's kind of entails. But unmanaged test automation only shows people that that automation might not actually kind of achieve what you set out to do, or you just start automating till the cows come home, and that's not feasible, and it will bring kind of bad experiences up to the top very easily.
So we did an interview last year on the World Quality Report with the head of quality engineering for one of the big American banks, and she'd come back after maternity leave. I'd been out for a year, and one of the first things she said was, "Well, I've come back, and all that anyone has achieved is they've automated everything that we did manually, regardless of asking themselves the questions of, do we still need to do this? Is this the right thing to be automating?"
Yeah.
And she reckoned that 80% of it was no benefit to her at all. But it looked good. We've got 100% automation.
Exactly. And 100% automation should not be the goal. And again, what is 100%? Is it 100% of everything? 100% of identified automation? Again, if you don't have a process around kind of defining what you're doing, how you go from automation, from manual to automation, or pick up new scripts straight away into automation, you don't build a trust within the clients. I've seen this happen in a bank where the automation team took on automating all the manual scripts, and so they were happily coding along. Came in to do an assessment, and it turns out that they automated tests, but they forgot to tell the manual testers. So during execution time, they were double executing, which is, doesn't say that. It's just weird if you can actually get that far. And back on the tooling side of things, also, it doesn't need to be just another shiny tool. I like this tool. I know what to do with this. It needs to be well thought through, and we'll come to that in a second.
So when we talked about this one earlier about the another shiny tool, one of the things that does quite annoy me is I've gone somewhere, there's say 8 agile teams that are in there. They're doing good. They're all doing good work, but they've all got their own framework. They've all got their own automation tool. They've all got their own pipeline, and they complain that it's difficult to move from one team to the next, and it's difficult to find all of the skills that they need.
Yeah.
And I think if you don't have that strategy, you're going to get all of those things. You're going to get the unstructured.
Absolutely.
You're not going to have the coding standards, and it just becomes more and more difficult to keep it going. And then someone comes along and says, well, why are we spending all of this money on all of these different tools? Even if they're open source, there's still a cost in everyone working on them.
Exactly. But we'll come to that a bit more details in a second when we look at good automation, because there's 2 sides of that coin. So we'll come to that in a second. So we're on the bad and on the ugly.
Before you start the next question, by the way, Eli Waller is the third person.
Okay.
It's been bugging me. It just came back to me. Why, when I seen Clint Eastwood, did I remember it was Eli Waller? I don't know.
Well, that's good to know, isn't it?
Mm.
The film boss will be very proud of you. So when we go into automation, good automation, now we'll turn the question around from the earlier one from Bart. We've got to Menti and have kind of put 3 words in there that makes you think that's what good automation looks like. So they're kind of saying, right, what do we, how do we recognize good automation?
See what we're going to get. Well, this. Oh, right.
Simple. Oh, I like the simple one. Oh, the dreaded RUI.
Well, if you're doing something and it doesn't.
No, it is. But I think there's a whole separate presentation around what is the ROI.
I don't mind what it is, but I think most customers would like to see something in 6 months. Something that you say will pay for itself in 2 years, like in automation, probably doesn't have any space in an agile world anymore. And the world is agile now. That's pretty much the default way of working for most of our customers now.
Yeah, but not all. So
be careful. No, I said most.
Simple. I like the simple and structured. That seems to be together with the ROI. And to be honest, I think they are interlinked. Those 3, being structured, a good ROI, and being simple. Because if you're not structured or simple, then you end up very quickly losing ROI. So that's
dry. Not quite sure what that one means.
Past tests. That's not sure if past test is actually good automation. You never know, because I mean, it's a good running automation suite. That's good. But if they all fail, and they're all failing because of bad software, well, maybe done a good job of them.
Yeah,
But I
I
see
think
where
this
that
is a
comes from
nice
then.
set. I think this is
Yeah,
a really nice set of answers to it, though.
this is really good.
You know, the
Certainly use that one
standards,
further.
yeah, business goals, dynamic, specific and scalable. I like those two actually being near each other in the word cloud. Scalable is also in there, structured, business goals. You know, you and
Yeah,
actually there's a good one that doesn't come out very often. Use skills effectively. Yeah,
yeah,
I think that's a really nice thoughtful point. Reduce the regression pressure. Oh my, yes.
please.
Ah, someone's explained driving. Don't repeat
Thank you,
yourself.
Martin.
Thank you, Martin. Yes.
Very good. I like that one. Yeah, I have to remember that one now.
Yeah, that is definitely a good one. I can see it
Yeah.
coming in my automation report tomorrow when I go back to my customer.
Right.
Intuitive, clear. Yeah,
Right.
I
That's
mean, I'm actually
very
really
good.
pleased with what people are saying in this because I think it reflects on everyone who's taking part
Yeah.
having good ideas of what good looks like. And in
Yeah.
a way, I'm
Glad.
glad that people know what good looks like because I'm a bit more positive about automation
Yeah.
as a result of that.
That's good. So let's go back to our presentation um, and have a look at kind of lift some of these ones out because it is as we said, it's not everything is opposite of what we said about was ugly and bad.
Mhm.
There's some thoughts behind this, indeed. Kind of good strategy and plan helps kind of have the conversation with your clients, but also I'm on the currently on the client side where they want to rerun the tests 10 years down the line because there are upgrades and it's likely to happen. So it's a lasting solution. But in 10 years' time, when there's an upgrade coming, a massive upgrade or a change, they might want to look back 10 years saying, right, what happened? How did we get those tools? And how did we get to this framework? So it is providing that backstory.
That's a classic that you've sort of hit on there because an awful lot of the time it's the soft knowledge, the soft conversations that go around a decision that really get captured. And 10 years down the line, everyone's moved on, different jobs, organizations may have been taken over, merged, expanded, contracted, and expanded again in that time. If you
Exactly.
capture that sort of stuff as part of the strategy and the plan and explain why you're doing it, you have a document that's not just for now, but for a good number of years down the line.
Absolutely. And that includes what we talked about a couple of times already is about the tooling. Why did we choose a tool?
Mm,
Because it's not just saying, oh, we're just somebody chose it because they experience. There is a
mm,
reasoning behind it, and you can make this as complicated as you want it to be. But as long as there's reasoning in there, then it helps you. It helps you plan the accelerators you need to use, especially if you have SAP.
mm.
You
Well,
have accelerators,
yeah,
so
thinking
you need to
thinking
use them.
back, thinking back,
Yep.
we had a colleague whose answer to everything was UFT. It
Yeah.
didn't matter what the question was. It was always going to be UFT was the answer to whatever the question was from the customer.
Yeah. Indeed. And again, sometimes right, but
Mm,
it needs to fit um, um, it needs to fit the client situation, the skills,
yeah.
the resources, the future plan, potentially if you want the rest of the organization, how it fits in there. So
Mm.
we'll come to that in a second because there's another kind of nuance fact for that one also on that one.
Do you have
So
some more bullet points, perhaps?
yeah, no, I do. Clear standards. Now, of course, we talked about that earlier. Reusability. Yeah, don't repeat yourself. Absolutely brilliant. That's on. It's need to have them in there.
Mm,
Even if you're on your own, it doesn't help. Doesn't hurt putting those in there to show your clients or show the project manager saying you know what you're doing. We're
yeah.
following standards. So it provides that trust, and that's not to underestimate that one also.
And I've got to admit, clear standards is often for me when I've been setting them as much as for anyone else to remind myself what my expectations are of the team, and also if I decide in a fit of stupidity to try and do some automation these days, that I follow them.
Yep, absolutely, and it helps potentially new starters also. So
Mm,
if you're a new starter, if you are there somebody who might be experienced coming from the outside the organization, it helps you kind of guide yourself in the right direction. Now, next one is an interesting one: freedom. it's a freedom of choice to a degree. You mentioned earlier around the 8 agile teams having all different tools or frameworks.
Mm,
Well, if they are working on different areas, so one is working on UI, one is working on APIs, then different tools, yeah, absolutely not a problem. There should not be a problem with that. Again, it's having the choice, make it clear when you want to use what. But at the same time, look at mobile, process automation, all kind of stuff. If that becomes part of your project or part of your QA area, the testing area, then freedom to choosing a different tool should not be standing in the way. It's not like, oh, we bought this tool and for eternity we'll be using that tool. There's an investment you're going to make. So that's one thing to look out for. But at the same time, if you have the right reasons for it, using the freedom of another tool,
mm.
you should have that freedom.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things to consider, look at Java. I remember when Java came in, that shows my age. Java is now a legacy language to a lot of people.
Yeah,
People are moving away from it. Angular, I think, is pretty much dead now as a framework on internet sort of and e-commerce sites, and people are going to React.
yeah,
And the tools have to adapt, and sometimes your tool will no longer work efficiently with the new
absolutely,
world.
absolutely. And different UIs. Some. I mean, when websites became more graphical, and kind of, especially with kind of um, the things happening with the video and everything else,
Mm,
tools could not keep up with that initially. So having specific tool for that is one thing. So there is a lot of things to do on this, and looking at also the future wise. Um, when you start automation, do you look at just your system testing? Do you look at shift left, shift right? Um, Conversations can go into RPA, into process automation, and it's something to be aware of that people can. That's when you demonstrate this at client sites, the word will go around and conversations will be had, and so it can lead to expanding your own scope, expanding your footprint of the project team,
yeah.
or new opportunities even. So, but one thing I want to also put in here, and that's is to think about succession planning.
Mm,
So you might not be on that project for eternity. So, well, let's hope not. Um, then you need to be able to kind of make sure that your automation can be handed over to somebody else. Does it need to be handed over to the client side? Yeah, there's business as usual team that will pick it up. What are they like? Are they technical? Are they not technical? So there's a lot of these things in there that we need to be aware of.
you hit a great one there. So my current automation team, we've got about, I don't know, 100 scenarios that we've automated at the moment, and the system architects have come along and thought, oh, we can use that, and no, we don't need any help. Can we have a meeting, please?
Yep.
And the fact that we've had the strategy, the standards, and the team have had the freedom to work within those standards, don't do anything silly, keep it under a certain size, document, and things like that. We're able to take that information, and now the architect's gone, actually, we understand what you're doing now. So how do we configure it? Okay, great, understood.
Yeah.
And it's become a lot easier to do that.
No, absolutely. I know it's that it, it's I mean my current clients is indeed is looking at expanding that in the future. Taking a framework from somebody else
Mhm.
externally, and again, nothing wrong with it. Maybe not the world's best, but it does this job perfectly well. So we didn't have to spend time investing in the framework, and again, that was all part of the strategy and the plan is in there why we chose those things, and the standards are in there. They're being developed as we go along, as we build this implementation to clients. So um, now, thinking going forward, we all kind of hear various different things from the tooling industry. Um, what do we think ourselves? I think that's the key thing. I'm not so much kind of where their tools get to. Tools can do a lot nowadays. But I think question for everybody is kind of where do you think automation should be in the next 10 to 15 years, 10 20 years? And it could be anything. Not making myself a cup of coffee, that's fine. I can do that myself. But yeah, I saw that one coming. AI. Yeah. Nowhere. Oh, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what that one might mean. I think it may become niche.
Yeah.
You know, it becomes
I mean,
we've got an automation team. They look after the legacy stuff.
yeah. I mean, who knows? I mean, what's beyond AI, maybe?
Mm,
Um, and it's interesting. Self-learning. Will it do itself? Maybe with structured applications,
mm.
maybe the likes of SAP, things might be built in. Again, that might be an interesting conversation to be had. I mean, maybe that's another presentation we have to have at some stage. AI and automation, where it can lead.
That's probably one that we should throw at Mark Oost and Antoine Amaya, because that's their sort of specialist
True.
subject, automation and AI.
Yeah.
And I think there's some challenges on there. I mean, these are all good answers, though, I think.
Yeah. Take it serious at last. I like that one. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Um,
I've got a feeling that an awful lot of these wouldn't look out of place on most tool vendors' sales material.
yeah.
I see low code in so many places, or no code, and I'm still waiting for a demo that doesn't at some point in, and then we type in this line of code.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, again, I think no code is possible. But it all depends on, again, is no code frameworks. So you build the framework and then spreadsheets on the other end, just
Mhm.
that's no code. I don't know. There is depends on where you put the code. There's always code involved, but if you build
Mm.
it into the tool or you build
Ooh.
it in a little layer, it's yeah.
Oh, there's a
Uh,
lovely one there, testing quantum algorithm. Now, if you look at a quantum algorithm, doesn't that change the outcome?
how would you know it's no difference? It's the same answer at the same time.
Yeah. There's one that I haven't seen on there that I thought maybe might do, sustainable,
Uh, that's a good one.
because there's an awful lot of energy and carbon footprint and heat involved in running automation all of the time. And I know some clients, some projects where
Mm,
automation is running every day, every hour, the same automation, just in
yeah.
case they need it. And that's spending an awful lot of CPU time, an awful lot of energy. That
Yeah, that's
maybe,
interesting because the question there also is why would you need to run it every day, every hour? Are you really changing everything? I mean, there might be client sites where they do push out updates every hour, but
yeah.
yeah, that's an interesting one. Maybe
Well,
you
I
should
like
be running it only
mm,
on commits, but
yeah. Well, I quite like the self-healing because I've been hearing that for my entire career in testing.
yeah,
Self-healing testing, self-healing scripts, self-healing code. I used to call them error messages and basically try statements and then sort of skip if it fails.
yeah, exactly.
I
And
want the next level.
that's that's a good set of
Mhm.
yeah. No. Okay,
Uh,
right. So we're nearly to the end. So what I like to kind of finish off with is my take on where we can start. What can we do? What kind of start with these things? And kind of not my kind of top three is key some key points. And it starts right at the beginning. Too often, um, somebody plucks a figure from the air, or there's some calculations behind it saying, "Oh, we'll do 2 tests, 3 tests a day, or 4 tests a day, and that's what we get through it." And then we get the complexity in there about low, medium, high complexity. Um, being realistic in estimations is difficult, but should be strive. We need to strive for that, and or at least be realistic about the client, saying this is how we calculated this, and this is how we plan to do these things. So that leads on to keep KPIs also. We need to have them because in the end, we talked about the ROI already. It was popped up in the clouds, in the word clouds. They need to be realistic, and they need to be able to measure something that is going to be useful at the end. So we'll have ambitious KPIs, but they need to be realistic, and build the flexibility when you start off, because in the end, if you have a very strict framework and very kind of focused on one thing only, then as soon as something changes, you need to be able to go along with that. During delivery, kind of if you use KPIs and estimates, you need to monitor it. That feeds into the management side of things also, because you need to be able to provide that kind of back to kind of the stakeholders. But above all, do not over-engineer. Yes, sometimes a technical solution that is complex is needed, but try to avoid it. Maybe come to a point of saying, well, maybe we should not automate here. I've seen huge, well, I'm sure they started off as frameworks and became very easily grew out of control and became huge kind of applications in their own right. With all the best intentions at the end, in the beginning, the end result was it was difficult to maintain, and because technology moved on, the framework didn't, and so lost its flexibility, and that can be painful. Talks about longevity, succession planning, make sure it lasts, keep it simple, provides confidence. Don't underestimate that one. Clients, stakeholders, if they understand what you're doing, it helps with a lot of things. Kind of have the conversations with the clients and even having difficult conversations, eventually saying, right, we can't go any further for these reasons. If the confidence is there that you did the right thing, that's the great thing. Now we're all experts in automation.
Well, you're assuming that, but it
most
could
are
be
actually
people.
assuming that. Yes, I could see, but we have some expertise. But if that's not within the planning phase or delivery phase, then the technical excellence team or the gurus, whatever we call them, lead technologists, anything, they should be there to provide the expertise, and that can be in automation itself, but also in the tooling. Help the accelerators, because accelerators can be built fast and furious, and you can't keep you might not always know what's available, and that's where, I mean, we've got Center of Excellence, which is brilliant because they have all these things available. And I mean, ultimately, I would like to have a standardized approach. Now, it doesn't have to be one solution for fits all. There should be a number of solutions available, because again, clients are different. So we need to kind of make it fit, not just tooling, but also our approach to automation. So
I think we're probably coming to the end of this. I know that you and I
I
could
agree.
probably argue
Oh,
over
yes.
some of these words for hours, and have done before, and will do again. So opening up now for any questions. Now, just answering one that Edwin raised on the back of a comment that I made about Java's being legacy. So if anyone hasn't seen the response, it's my clients who actually are calling Java a legacy system. 20 plus years ago, they moved into Java. They re-engineered their estates. New generations of IT staff have come through, made decisions, and they've seen Java as the old school ways of working from the 90s, the 2000s. And when they look at the needs of an organization that might span multiple time zones, multiple devices, and to be honest, Java is not the most elegant language in the world. Inheritance is one of the great crimes against clarity when it's done badly. When you start trying to go back through 7 lines or 7 levels of inheritance to try and figure out why something isn't working, something's gone wrong. And there's so much bad practice. And Java's unfortunate. It's just that happens to be the one that's on my radar at the moment. There's other languages that people recommend, Python's almost as old as Edwin said, but it has the perception for a lot of people as being a bit more modern.
Just take the interesting of just looking at some of the questions entering. The one for Peter just now come in. What are the current top tools? Careful, we don't know. We only have so much time left, but I mean, it does. I do find it does depend on the region you work in. So it's even within Europe, there's different concept of kind of what tool of choice is within the country. So I know kind of Germany, they used it a long time. Tesca, Tosca, Test Tosca. There's a lot now being said in the UK around Cyprus. So
Well,
it's
let's know now. So if people don't know
yeah,
about it, we have
absolutely.
the Know Now knowledge repository on our corporate website, and within there, every year Anton and I publishes a reference book of all of the tools that are in use across our estate.
Yep. Good.
Worldwide, and they compare the strengths and weaknesses of those tools, where you can find out more information, case studies, areas that it's worked well in, strengths and weaknesses against other tools as well. And it's a great
And contacts.
resource, really.
Yeah, and
Yeah. But,
contacts. And
but
also,
unfortunately, because I don't have my Outlook open because we're doing a presentation, I don't have the exact title in there,
yeah.
but I think it's one of the few documents that's authored by Antoine Amaya in there. And it is a really, really good sort of very authoritative. Probably
Yeah, and
runs for about 80 pages.
yeah, and because it not just covers automation, it covers some bits of performance, the pipeline, unit code, unit testing, monitoring. So there's a lot of tools in there, and it's worth having a look at that one. Yeah, it is context dependent sub tools. All right, Martin. Right. Any other questions from anybody
Yes,
else?
I've got a couple that I noted down as we went on from there. So, who really should benefit from automation? Is it for our benefit or whose?
Yeah, good point. I think it's still the client's benefit. If we need to deliver things in a particular time frame, then it will be our benefit. But then we probably have planned something in advance, so we know what we would do. So I like to think that normally in our projects that we come across, automation is planned. But at the same time, in the end, it's the business that will benefit from it. If we can deliver, well, can we deliver faster? I'm never really sure if automation actually delivers faster, but it runs tests faster generally.
It is a great resource. I've had that benefit twice in the last month, where because it's running really early through my offshore team, we found major catastrophes caused by our cloud provider upgrading things without telling us, so that when I've come in, the alerts have already gone all the way back up and I come in and the fixed process is already in place because automation captured the key information. And
Yeah.
one time, just before Easter, they got a screenshot that we've been hunting for days of an error message that flashed up on the screen. So sometimes it is the most wonderful accelerator. Sunita has shared the link to
Yeah. There you go.
Know Now for anyone who needs it in chat. Um,
Interesting,
the,
Peter. Okay, yeah,
as
go for it.
I was just going to say, Esben's comment about test automation. I think you're probably right. Automation as a whole approach. There are many things that we can use it for functional testing,
Oh,
for builds, creating data, deployments. All sorts of things can be
I mean,
automated.
to be honest, I think I was using automation beyond the testing um, 10, 15 years ago for indeed, as you said, getting data produced. I'm sure there's better ways of creating test data, but at this stage we had to age it and could only be done through a UI, which we just automated. But I guess that leads into kind of RPA very easily, and this is where RPA nowadays kind of moves towards automation, and automation moves towards RPA. In essence, they're doing very, very similar things.
It,
If
it, there's no difference really
no,
under it. The product passport. It's called the product passport in
that's
Know
it.
Now.
Yeah, well done, well done. Peter has another interesting question. Kind of why would you avoid automated testing? Simplest answer is when it's taking too long to establish and the time frame is not there. If
When the
it's
ROI is not there as well. You know, if
exactly,
it's going to
yeah.
cost us
Well,
£1 million to get £500,000 of benefit to the
not
customer.
don't. Yeah,
Yeah.
don't do it. Again, but these things start small, because it's easier to swallow the fact that we only have to throw away 3 months of work because we have to stop somewhere.
Mm.
On the other side, yeah, it's the ROI is a dirty word sometimes. Trying to establish that the right thing, but because I think it does depend on how you automate, and it leads kind of sort of into what Tony says about what is how you prove the effectiveness of automation.
Yeah.
It's not about finding defects. It's maybe it's a legion of kind of topics that go in there. Kind of is it does it run without errors, and those are errors on the automation solution. So I'm not talking
I
about
think it's a
software
confidence
errors.
thing, really, isn't it? You know,
Yeah,
you've got this automation. You know that before you go in to do anything else, automation's run against it. As an example, it's proved that this 100 key journeys has worked before you go in to test this new release. And you know what, if it fails on the first 5 of them, you're not going to spend your time on it. It's easier for the developers to get a message back saying automation has failed, because they're used to getting that from build systems, from the compilers or interpreters. And we've had a question from Tony going on, how do you prove the effectiveness of automation testing? And that's bubbling away in there. I'd actually say, how do you prove the effectiveness of any testing? It's, you know, it's no different for automation.
yeah,
And it's not
yeah,
about bugs.
no, often there is time involved. Kind of how much time do you spend on your solution? How much time do you spend on maintenance of your automators? Unfortunately, time
Mhm.
gets very quickly linked to ROI. So it might not be an ROI and for a test manager or project manager, but and stakeholders, and unless Open says business, yeah, trying to have a conversation with a senior stakeholder and try to say, well, I'm investing this. Do I get my money back? It
So
will grant you, it does not immediately a sign for effective automation, but
mm,
certainly helps.
it does. Now, Peter's got a interesting view. Isn't testing like insurance? You spend the money and hope you never have an emergency. I like to think of it more like joining the gym, eating healthily, keeping yourself in shape, seeing your doctor regularly for a checkup, all of those sort of things, rather than sort of insurance, because insurance is really, oops, it's too late.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
I see where you come from with the idea, but yeah, indeed, it's automation is there for good purposes, to help you out. Insurance is kind of cover your the backside for kind of problems.
Yeah. And to be honest, I think testing is normally there for development to raid for time because they're late.
Yeah,
And I think that's half the reason our industry exists, is that development wanted to have a safe way of contingency without calling it in their plans.
yeah,
And they got a bit scuppered by Agile coming along and sort of spoiling that for a while. So I think we've come to the end of our allotted time.
yep,
Marco, thank you very much for all of your insights.
yep. My
This
pleasure.
will be available on the website. If you have questions, challenges, please do reach out to Marco. This is part of an ongoing series of SogetiLabs conversations that are running at the moment. Watch your emails for the next one and the next one beyond that. Thank you also for everyone who's taken part, either by just finding the time to come today in your busy lives or taking part in the questions. And I've got the feeling that Mark and Brian and Peter and Tony are going to have quite a conversation going for some hours. And I'd love to spend the time on it, but I have a client call to go to in 4 minutes.
No, I think I think automation always drives discussions. I'm pleased to see that's not changed.
So in 20
And
years' time, are you going to come back and talk to us about the good, the very good, and the amazingly good?
yeah, from behind my Zimmer frame, maybe yes.
Well, if necessary.
Anyway, that it was a pleasure, and
Okay.
we'll certainly do a follow up in due course.
Merci, Peter. And thank you, everyone.
Thank
Stay
you.
safe, be well, and look after yourselves. and we'll see you all in the near future, perhaps. Take care.
Okay. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.